Hey YouTube, it's Little Rocker Cutie 2005, also known as Andre here, and I am back with ya to do the rest of my top 42. Of course, Buffy's the Man, also known as Chris, he's here off to the side, probably going to be providing a little side commentary for me like I did with his top 30.
You better believe it.
And as I said in his video, this is a response to Justin in Rhine1988 when he did his top 15 favorites. I couldn't stop at 15, as you know, I ended up with 42, but I'm going to finish off the list, and here we go. Number 21, Full Metal Jacket. Quite possibly one of my favorite movies about the Vietnam War that takes place during it. And I wasn't allowed to watch this movie when I was younger, but I was allowed to watch stuff like Platoon, and I think I was really the only one I was allowed to watch at the time. I didn't see this one until I was like 16 or 17, but I really got into it, and when I saw it, I was an instant fan of it. But it's probably one of my favorite war movies, and I know there's a newer edition of this with features. I'd actually like to get my hands on it, but I don't know if I'll be able to find it anywhere, but that's Full Metal Jacket. Number 20, Ralph Bakshi's American Pop. Now, this movie is actually a pretty fun one. It revolves around 4 generations of the same family whose lives revolve around the popular music of the times. And it's basic, like I said, the story of 4 generations in the same family. And, you know, you got different groups doing the music, you know. You get, like, up to the 60s time, which is a big chunk of the movie. You get stuff like Jefferson Airplane, Mamas and the Papas. Then you get to the last bit and you get stuff like Pat Benatar, Bob Seger. There's a lot of good music in this movie. If you're a Ralph Bakshi fan, or if you're a fan of music in general, this is one I would recommend. And if you want some more information, I would recommend checking out OCP Communications' review of this. I'll leave a link to his review down below. I'll try and find it again and make sure I leave a link for you, but it'll be down below. But that's American Pop. Number 19, The Long Kiss Goodnight. This is probably one of my favorite Gina Davis movies, and I think it's the only action movie she ever did. And it also has Samuel L. Jackson, and it's directed by Rennie Harlan. And it's about this school teacher who has had amnesia for 8 years, and she finds out she was once an assassin for the CIA, and now the people she used to work for want her dead. And it's all about her trying to find out who she once was and pretty much save herself and her daughter from this group that wants to kill her, and basically, and she ends up saving the country. It's a pretty action-packed movie. It's really fun at times. It's one of my favorites. I'd highly recommend you check this out.
It's a great underrated movie.
It is underrated, very.
People don't watch it because, I don't know, one reason or another, but it's a movie everyone should at least watch once.
At least once. Next up, number 18, Empire Records. This is actually the extended edition, and it's got 16 minutes of additional footage, and I think this is the one that had the soundtrack changed, but I'm not too sure on that. Maybe Robin Karate Popcorn, you could help me out with that. But anyways, this is another one of my favorite movies. I got into this in high school in my film class when one of the other students brought it in to show the rest of the class because we had like a free day or something like that. But I remember watching this movie and just really getting into it. And it's got an excellent cast. I mean, you got Renee Zellweger and Liv Tyler in early roles. You got Robin Tunney from The Craft, you know, Sarah. You got Anthony Apaglia from Without a Trace. Maxwell Caulfield, he was in Grease 2. He plays this, like, big superstar who's coming to the store that this cast of kids all works in. And it's basically like this really big day at the store. But it's basically a day in the life of a group of kids that work in a record store. Not much else to be said, but it's a really great movie. And I'd recommend everybody watch it at least once. Number 17, the original Dawn of the Dead. This is probably my all-time favorite zombie movie. Well, there's one exception, which I'll get to a little later in the list. But this is probably, like I said, probably my favorite zombie movie. But most of it takes place in a shopping mall, which is part of what I love about it. And I love the gore. I mean, the zombies, they're the slow-moving zombies you expect. I mean, who expects running zombies? I mean, I certainly don't. I mean, if I see zombies, I expect zombies like this. But that's Dawn of the Dead, one of my favorite zombie movies. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I'd highly recommend you pick up this edition. It's the 4-disc Ultimate Edition. 3 different cuts of the movie and a disc of bonus stuff. It's loaded with features. This is the best edition to have, even over the Blu-ray from what I've heard. But Dawn of the Dead, check it out.
I like the original better than the remake.
The remake is okay, but it kind of had its down points.
Yeah, but I like the original. I thought was a lot better, and
The original is a lot better.
it had actual more of a plot than the remake.
I agree. The remake had some plot. It tried to stay true to the original for most of it, but it was another one of them running zombie movies.
Oh yeah.
Number 16, Disturbing Behavior. Now, I saw this movie, I think, freshman year of high school when it first came out, and it reminded me a lot of my own high school, which I thought was pretty much hell in a handbasket. And anyways, it's about these 3 outcasts who you see on the cover, and this evil guidance counselor who's taking all the, like, I don't know if you'd call them, like, slackers or deadbeats or whatever, and turning them into straight-A students. And this kid right here, no, not him, this one, they end up getting him and putting him into the program, turning him into one of them, and basically it goes on from there to all hell breaking loose at the end. And it left it open for a sequel, which I wish they would have done, but so far it's been over 10 years and there's been no sequel. I mean, this is a movie that deserves a sequel. It left it open. They gotta make a sequel, in my opinion. But I'm not sure they could get James Marsden and Katie Holmes back, because Katie Holmes, she's raising her daughter, so I'm not sure she'd do an R-rated movie, plus she's doing stuff on Broadway. James Marsden, he's coming back for the new X-Men movie, from what I've heard.
It's in production.
Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it to be true, and it's in production right now.
There's a lot of Marvel movies in production from what I've seen.
Oh, yeah.
Number 15 on my list, Demolition Man. This movie, I think, is very underrated. It's got Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, plus Sandra Bullock in an early role, and also an appearance by Rob Schneider. And this is basically Stallone's a cop who gets frozen and he's a 1990s cop chasing after a criminal. And basically both him and the criminal, who's Wesley Snipes, they get frozen and they're thawed out 35 years later. And basically the criminal Wesley Snipes' character gets unthawed first. And he basically breaks loose and causes all hell, which makes the cops at the time defrost Stallone's character, and he has to go after him. And that's basically the gist of the whole movie. It's basically Stallone trying to catch Wesley Snipes, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a really fun, futuristic style movie. It was actually designed by the guy who worked on Blade Runner, the futuristic look of it. It was, as I said, designed by the guy who worked on Blade Runner, and it's a really fun, action-packed movie, highly underrated in my opinion. Demolition Man, if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend giving it a look. Now, number 14 on my list is one I'm sure everyone has seen, but it is Aliens. Probably my favorite in the Alien series. This is the one that made Ripley into a badass, and it's actually the only one where she fires a gun, because from what I've heard, Sigourney Weaver, she's anti-gun, doesn't like to use them, even when she's working on a movie. So this is the only time you'll really see her in like a really badass moment in the Alien franchise, which is why I think this is probably the best one in my opinion. Plus, it's the first one I saw growing up. I saw this first, then I went back and saw the first one. Then I think I saw 3, which I hated.
I loved it.
Well, that's you.
Of course.
Then I saw Resurrection. I did like that one. The AVP movies, I'm kinda, on them, but I do own them. But anyway, Aliens, probably my favorite in the franchise. If you haven't seen it, have you been living under a rock? Check this movie out. And I would recommend either getting this particular version, or if you have the Alien Anthology Blu-ray, it does come with both versions. I'd recommend checking out the extended cut. It's got 20 minutes of extra footage that adds a lot more to the movie. It makes it a more of a fun ride. But the special edition is really great. It's probably my favorite version of the movie, and it's the one I'd recommend. But that's Aliens. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Of course, I don't know how many of you haven't seen it, but I mean, come on, it's Aliens. Next up, number 13. This is actually my one exception to Dawn of the Dead, but it is the 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead. This was directed by Tom Savini, who was a gore effects guy on Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. He decided to direct the remake, and of course George Romero wrote the screenplay and served as executive producer, which I thought was really cool. But I like this one better than the original because Barbara actually becomes more of a badass, and that's one of the reasons I like this one so much.
There's none of that. Oh,
right. No going catatonic, no freaking out. Just straight from what's going on to, oh my god, I have to fight.
I just love that scene where she's freaking out and the guy smacks her. And she goes, oh!
Yeah.
It's like, oh crap.
Yeah, and after that she goes catatonic.
Yes, like, it's like
in the original.
It's like, looks like, really, lady? Really?
Number 12 on my list, quite possibly one of my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. It is Kickboxer. This was probably the first Van Damme movie I saw, along with Bloodsport, in a back-to-back thing. But this is the one. He's got a brother that gets paralyzed by the current champion, Tong Po. And basically it's up to Van Damme to avenge his brother and go after Tong Po. And he basically does, and kicks his ass in the end in this really cool fight scene where they have to fight with their fists bound in rope and covered in broken glass. That's like one of the coolest parts of the movie, is the whole end fight. I mean, I love this whole movie. This one and Bloodsport are probably my favorites, but Kickboxer, give it a look if you haven't seen it. If you love Van Damme like I do, this is one I would highly recommend. It's quite possibly one of his best. I would say check this one out. Number 11, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Now, I saw this in the theater with Chris, and he practically had to drag me because I didn't want to go. But then we went, and I ended up loving it. And when the local Family Video was selling this, I went and bought it. And I've watched it, I don't know how many times since I bought it, but it's a movie that I've really come to love. I really enjoy it. I mean, I love Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's chemistry in it. I mean, heck, this is the movie they got together on. Brad Pitt, as you all know, left Jennifer Aniston for Angelina Jolie while they were filming this movie. But I guess sometimes on-screen chemistry can lead to off-screen chemistry.
Yeah, I remember having to pull you in about a year to the theater to watch that. But I also have the unrated version of that movie.
I'd like to get my hands on that.
I got it at Walmart one day, I think, for like $14, and it had like 3 alternate endings. 2 filmed, and 1 was a script.
Huh. Number 10 on my list, Stephen King's Firestarter. Now, this is mainly for the original with Drew Barrymore, because this was the first movie I saw with her in it when I was like 7 years old, and I developed an instant crush, which has never died. Drew Barrymore is probably one of my all-time favorite actresses, and this is one of the movies that really proved that she could act even as a kid, because she plays this little girl named Charlie McGee, and she's got the power to start fires with her mind, and there's this government agency called The Shop that wants to capture her and control her. They basically capture her in the first movie, and she breaks out. Well, she doesn't really break out, but her father has these powers. He's like what they call a pusher. Like in the movie Push, when you have them people that can control people's minds. He's kind of like that, but he can push people to do what he wants them to do, and he basically pushes the leader of the shop into helping them escape. And of course her father gets shot by George C. Scott, who is in a great role in this movie, and basically all hell breaks loose from there because Drew Barrymore just gets pissed off and burns the place to the ground. It's just a really fun movie with a satisfying ending. It's sort of a revenge style ending, I would think, because she's getting her revenge against the people who killed her father at the end of it, and it's just really fun. It's one I really love. I haven't really checked out Firestarter 2, which also comes in this set, but I'm going to have to check that out one of these days, and maybe I'll do a Firestarter double feature. Let you know what I think of Firestarter 2, because I don't know if many people have actually reviewed it. Maybe I'd be the first one to do it, who knows. But that's Firestarter. If you haven't seen it, give it a look. I mean, if you love Stephen King like I do, this is an essential. Number 9 on my list is The Outsiders. Now, this is one I first saw in 7th grade, and we had to read the book, and then we ended up watching the movie, and I ended up loving the movie. I had it on VHS for a long time, then I got the DVD, then I actually found this 2-disc edition, which is an extended cut of the movie, and it's got like 20-something minutes of extra footage in it, and a lot of like deleted scenes and stuff like that. I haven't had a chance to really watch this or check out the bonus stuff, but I'm hoping the bonus stuff has some deleted scenes. Like, I've heard there were some scenes filmed with Heather Langenkamp from Nightmare on Elm Street, but her footage was cut, so I'm hoping maybe that footage is on this set. If anybody has this set and knows if that footage is there, please let me know. Number 8 on my list is actually a double pick. It's First Blood and Rambo First Blood Part 2. Now, these are actually my favorites out of the Rambo series. I'm a Stallone fan, I have to admit. These are two of my favorites. They're probably some of his most action-packed movies because he's just doing all kinds of shit. I mean, he's a Green Beret, well, ex-Green Beret that fought in Vietnam, and it's just, these are just really fun movies, action-packed, and they're just movies that I love. I mean, if you haven't seen the Rambo movies, I would say check them out, because, at least check out these two, because these are the two best ones in my opinion. I haven't seen 3, even though I do own it. I do own the 4th one. I did like that one for the most part. But these are the two I really had fun with. But that's Rambo 1 and 2. Number 7 is a personal favorite of mine that I got into in high school. It is the Matrix trilogy. So you got the Matrix, Matrix Reloaded, and Matrix Revolutions. Now, these are, I don't know how they really explain these movies, except that they're kind of futuristic, and they're some of the first movies to utilize the bullet time thing to an excellent degree. And the first one in particular is my real favorite. This is the one that I first saw when I was in high school, and I loved it. I had it on VHS. I watched it repeatedly after a friend turned me on to it. Not Chris, but another friend, because Chris doesn't like The Matrix, so I can't blame him. I can't blame him for that. I mean, there's even people who don't like the sequels, which I can understand, but even me, I like the first one more than I like the sequels, but I'd highly recommend at least giving the Matrix movies a look. If you don't like them, you know, that's your choice, but, you know, at least give them a look, give them a chance, you know, you may like them. But that's The Matrix. Number 6 on my list is actually a franchise. Harry Potter. Now, I chose to show you my favorite one, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I think everybody in the world knows Harry Potter. I don't have to say much about it. This one was actually my favorite, but Chris and I actually saw all of these, I think. Did we see them all twice, or?
The third one we didn't see in theaters together.
Oh yeah, we didn't see the third one in theaters together. I went by myself for that one. And I think we went to the 6th one once. We went to the 7th one once.
Yeah.
The 8th one we saw twice.
Yeah, because the 6th one and 7th one we saw with people.
Yeah.
They didn't show
We usually
up.
didn't go twice unless it was just us.
Right. And we went, first time we went, for the 6th one we went with my ex and
Your ex.
Roddy and
yeah.
me, and they didn't show up.
I know.
And during the 7.1, our friend Taylor was fighting with her boyfriend and whispering, got annoying. And
Yeah.
yeah.
We were actually going to see Order of the Phoenix a third time, but we didn't have the money. And which killed me because I wanted to go a third time because I love this one so much. It was just my favorite. It's still my favorite, even though they ended it in a slam bang finale, and I loved the final two.
Tell them about why we went to see Spider-Man 3. The trailer.
No, that was when we went to Spider-Man 2.
3. We never went to 2. We went to number 3, and they're showing a trailer for Harry Potter 5.
Oh. What year? 2007? Yeah, Spider-Man 3 came out in 2007.
Well, tell them the story about that.
Yeah, we went to see Spider-Man 3, and we saw the trailer for this, and we were just like, I mean, our jaws just dropped. We were like, we gotta see this movie. We went, loved it, went a second time, loved it just as much, wanted to go a third time, ended up not having the money. I was like, shit. But that's the Harry Potter franchise and kind of our little story behind it. If you like Harry Potter like I do, or we do pretty much, you know, if you haven't seen the movies, I can't really say, you know, give them a look. If you don't like them, I mean, that's your prerogative, like I said with The Matrix, but I think a lot of younger viewers like Harry Potter. You know, there's older people that like Harry Potter. I mean, I'm 29 and I like Harry Potter, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've been a fan since I was 16 years old and read the first book. But that's Harry Potter. Number 5 on my list is actually another Vietnam movie, but it is Platoon. This is the first movie dealing with the Vietnam War that I saw, and this is the one that I really came to love because you got Charlie Sheen, you got Willem Dafoe before he started doing all these bad guy roles lately, and then you got Tom Berenger, who does play the bad guy very well, and it's basically about this troop, this platoon in Vietnam, and there's a lot of shit going on. You know, they end up burning down a village, and one of the sergeants confronts the other. The other leads, actually, yeah, it's Willem Dafoe and Tom Berenger, they're sergeants. Willem Dafoe confronts Tom Berenger about what the platoon has done, and Tom Berenger ends up leaving Willem Dafoe's character to die, which is actually this cover shot here. That's the last shot of Willem Dafoe in the movie, but this is probably one of my favorite movies. It won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director for Oliver Stone, and it's probably one of his best in my opinion. One of my personal favorite Oliver Stone movies. It's just a great movie. I mean, if you like war movies, especially ones about the Vietnam War, I highly recommend this one. Number 4, this is one I've loved since I was like probably 12 or 13, but it is The Breakfast Club. This is basically about 5 kids that have to spend a Saturday in detention, and of course by the end of it they've all become friends, which is really cool to see because it's very rare that you see the nerd friends with the jock, you know, the outcast friends with the preppy girl, you know, you get your stoner guy or like your rebel, and he becomes friends with all of them. They pretty much all become friends. They all over the course of the movie. It's just really fun to see the evolution of the characters as they go throughout the movie. It's just a really fun one. It's one of my favorite John Hughes movies next to 16 Candles. And of course, Molly Ringwald, Miguel Estevez, Ali Sheedy. You know, you got a great cast. This is just a movie I highly recommend. If you haven't seen Breakfast Club, I don't know where you've been, but check it out. Now my top 3 are actually all horror franchises.
Who's not surprised?
They're not entirely franchises, they're just my favorites and the sequels to them. But number 3 is actually Friday the 13th, parts 1 and 2, and then parts 3 and 4. This is basically the whole original story put together, and basically you start out, you know, we all know the story of the original Friday the 13th. You know, boy drowns, mother takes revenge on the campers, last surviving counselor cuts off her head. Part 2, we get Jason starting out. He kills the last survivor of the first one, and it's basically Jason going on this quest for revenge, you know, killing off the counselors even though they didn't have any part in his mother dying, they were still in his, what you would call his area of the woods. So I guess you could say that gave him all the reason to kill him. Basically the same thing with Friday the 13th parts 3 and 4, but with part 3 it's where Jason gets his hockey mask, and I recently found out that the actor who played Jason in this one just passed away. So may Richard Brooker rest in peace. He was a great Jason in my opinion. And then you get to part 4, which is one of my favorites in the series, with Corey Feldman in an early role as Tommy Jarvis. And it's just a really fun ride. You know, Tom Savini from the first one came back to do the gore effects. And of course you get the death of Jason at the end. But even though part 4 was supposed to be the last one, we still got a shitload of sequels after that. It was like one a year for like, I don't know how many years after that. But anyway, that's the first 4 Friday the 13th movies. I love these ones, and I didn't include part 7, but I do love that one. I should have included it on this list, but I'll give it an honorable mention. And anyways, that's the Friday the 13th. Next up, Halloween 1, Halloween 2, no, Halloween 4, and Halloween H2O. Those are probably my favorites in the series. Those are the ones that I can watch like repeatedly. They're the ones that I really love. I mean, 1 and 2, of course, are the classics. You know, you get Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasence, of course. He would return for all of them except for part 3 up to part 6, which he died shortly after part 6 was finished. And may he rest in peace. He was a great Dr. Loomis. My personal favorite Dr. Loomis, in my opinion. You know, Malcolm McDowell and Rob Zombie's remakes, he's, ugh. As much as I like Rob Zombie's first Halloween, I do not like Malcolm McDowell as Dr. Loomis. I think he is, I can't even say the word, but, you know, it just spits in the face of Donald Pleasence, in my opinion, because his Loomis was really a great character. Michael McDowell's Loomis is basically an asshole.
Oh, I agree there. No one really can play Dr. Loomis like Donald Pleasence did.
No. Then you get Halloween 4, which of course you get Donald Pleasence coming back as Dr. Loomis. And of course, it's, as you see, the return of Michael Myers. It's basically Michael returning. He comes back after 10 years to Haddonfield, but only this time he's going after the daughter of Jamie Lee Curtis, who is his niece. And this one is really fun. It's one of the first horror movies I saw as a kid, and it was one that scared the pants off of me. But it was one that, as I grew up, I rented a lot. I watched it. I loved it. It's probably one of my favorite sequels in the series. Then you get to Halloween H2O with, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis coming back. And I think this is where the series should have ended. And this one actually gave Jamie Lee Curtis an awesome, like, Ripley-style moment near the end of the movie where she realizes she has to stop running, face her fear, and go after Michael Myers. And that's just one of the coolest things in the movie to see. It's one of the parts about the movie that I love. But those are the Halloween movies that I love. Now for number 1, And this shouldn't really come as a surprise to anybody. But Nightmare on Elm Street. Now I'm going to start off with part 1, the original, directed by Wes Craven, starring Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, who would play him up to Freddy vs. Jason in 2003, and basically he is Freddy. There is no other Freddy in my opinion. The remake, it's shit. Even though I own it, I don't watch it that much. I prefer this one way, way, way over the remake. I mean, you get Heather Langenkamp, who's a perfect Nancy. I mean, she's strong, she's capable, she fights back, and she survives. And that's the cool thing. I mean, you get Johnny Depp in an early role, he ends up dying. I mean, you got John Saxon playing her father. I mean, this is just a really great, great movie. It's one of my personal favorites. And that, of course, leads us into, continuing with my number 1, it's Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Now, I chose to go with the VHS of this because I think it's got cooler cover art, as you can see. I love the VHS ones and their cover art because I thought it was so cool. It used to scare me a lot as a kid. This was actually the very first horror movie I saw as a kid. And I remember the scene where Freddy's a giant snake. That scene just scared the shit out of me at like 4 years old, I remember. Because I remember just running to my room and just like shaking in fear. I think I had nightmares for like 2 weeks after that. But that's Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And of course, what I forgot to say about that one is that Heather Langenkamp comes back as Nancy. You got Wes Craven, who helped with the script. But the sad thing about part 3 is that, of course, Nancy dies, as most of the fans know. I mean, what else can you say? But that leads us into Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. This one, of course, is Chris's favorite, as you all know.
Oh, yeah.
And it introduces us to the character of Alice. And she becomes, like, the lead after the last 3 Dream Warriors die. And basically, as each of Alice's friends die, she pulls them into her dream, and she gains their powers as they die. Which leads up to this knockdown, drag-out battle with Freddy at the end, which is just really awesome to see. I mean, Freddy probably has, like, the best death ever in this one. This is probably his best death sequence. It's just really cool to watch the souls come out of his chest and rip him apart. But
we have had enough.
Yeah. But that's Nightmare 4, another favorite of mine. And last but certainly not least for my number 1 pick, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Now this one I thought was a really smart horror movie. I
agree with you there.
You know, you're bringing back Heather Langenkamp, you're bringing back John Saxon, you're bringing back Robert Englund as Freddy, of course, and playing himself. You got Wes Craven directing and writing it. He did a really good job with this, I think. It's really smart, really intelligent. It's a fun movie. This is probably one of my favorites, another one of my favorites in the series. As you saw, the 4 I picked are my favorites in the series, but if you haven't seen any of these movies that are on my list, I'd highly recommend you check them out. They're all great movies. But I may do a small video of some honorable mentions, but I don't know when that'll be, but that's my top 42 list, and I'd like to thank Justin Rhine1988 for giving me the idea. But anyways, this is Little Record Cutie 2005, also known as Andre, telling you to enjoy life, enjoy some Skittles, enjoy some Starburst, and in the words of Chris,
eat the chicken.
And I'm out.